Hello, thank you for making Obi-Wan a part of your Mother's Day weekend. My name is Kris. I'm one of the pastors here, and it's my privilege to share with you today. And if you're watching and you're a mother, happy Mother's Day. Man, we hope that you're having such a special day today. We also hope that you enjoyed our Mother's Day video. Speaking of the video, does your mother have the stare? Some of you know what I'm talking about. And even if it wasn't the stare, what did your mother do to where you knew that you were either in trouble or on the brink of being in trouble? Maybe did she do this? Did she say your full name sternly? And I have a question. How are we supposed to love our full names if we're only hearing it when we're in trouble? Who feels me on that one? Anyways, how about this? Have you ever made your mother cry? Man, I know as a son, at least, making my mother cry was like one of the worst feelings ever. It literally took the rebellion out of you and made you feel like the biggest jerk in the world. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Mom. Please just stop crying. I won't do that anymore. In fact, I'll never do that again. Just don't cry. Stop crying. Mothers can be such a great part of the family unit. And speaking of families, I love my family. I love when the big family, talking about the extended family, it's great to be with bigger family, like when grandparents and siblings and aunts and uncles and cousins get together. The laughs can be many and the memories are just amazing. But here's the thing. Families can also, there's times where families can hurt each other. There's times where we've hurt each other and have brought pain and frustration to each other. I love my wife. And one of my favorite things that I do with my wife that I can at least share publicly, I had to keep it real, right? I mean, come on now. Anyways, now that the cat is out of the bag, we actually are going to talk about sex in a couple weeks, so please make sure that you join us for that one. It's going to be really good. But one of the favorite things I love to do with my wife is to hike Torrey Pines together and to talk about how we're doing and to talk about our future together. And she's really my best friend, and I'm very thankful that I get to do this thing called life with her. I'm so thankful that she's the mom to my two kids. But if I'm being transparent, because we're the closest to each other, we really do have the capacity to hurt each other like no other. Another example, I love my kids. I've wanted to be a dad since I could remember, and God has blessed me with two very awesome kids. They're the best. I'm so thankful for them. And while I believe that I'm a pretty decent dad, there are still things that I regret because of the pain that I've caused them. Families can be a lot of fun, but they can also bring a lot of hurt. Have you ever been there where someone in your family has brought pain to you, has brought hurt to you, has brought suffering to you? Of course you've been there. Every family has hurts and less than desirable traits about it. In our social media pristine age, it's easy and tempting to look at other families and say, why can't my parents be this way? Why can't my siblings be this way? Man, why can't my spouse treat me this way? Or, man, why can't my kids treat me this way? That family doesn't seem to struggle. Is it too much to ask to have their life and their good fortunes? That said, families hurt each other from time to time. Sometimes even more. Maybe there's someone in your family that has hurt you. Hurt oftentimes are things we don't want to talk about. We don't want to address it or deal with it. It's like maybe if I ignore it or just don't pretend, I'm just going to pretend that it's not there, that I'm really not hurting, maybe it will go away. But can I say, usually that makes it worse. It makes it bigger over times. And as San Diegans, we can't afford for hurts in our homes to get bigger. Why? Because our homes aren't big enough. There are other parts of the country right now where bigger hurts can go into a home because the homes are bigger. But we know as San Diegans that our homes aren't big enough. Anyways, I'm obviously having a little fun, but when hurts go unaddressed, it can cause you to turn resentful towards the person that hurt you. Even little hurts that continue to go unsaid can have a great effect on our family relationships. I know it. Your goal is to have a blessed home and one not one that's filled with hurt. I've never met anybody that woke up one morning and said, I hope my desire for today, my desire for this week is to have the most hurt that I've ever had with other family members before. That's not our goal. Our goal is to have a blessed home, not one that's filled with hurt. But the fact is, no family is perfect. So there's going to be hurt along the way. Knowing that there will be hurt, is there a way to keep a home blessed as well? Is there a solution to this problem? There actually is. One of the biggest things that separates Christianity is this crazy thing called forgiveness. See, most love the idea of forgiveness when we're the ones receiving it, but it's so much harder to have to give out forgiveness. Some of the people that most likely need consistent amounts of forgiveness from you are people in your family. And it's not because the family over social media is perfect or better than yours. They fight too. Believe me, they do. Here's why they need forgiveness. It's because you have known your family the longest and you're with them the most. So for our remaining time, I want to talk about taking your family hurts head on by forgiving. So there was one of Jesus' friends, his name was Peter, and he had a question for Jesus about forgiveness. Listen in, you can follow along on the screen if you'd like. It says this in Matthew 18. Peter came to Jesus. He asked, Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Some of you are like, okay, I've been with this person for a while. I've known my kid for a while. I've known my family member for a while. I've probably forgiven them like 20-something times. So great, I only have like 50 more times to go. I'm obviously teasing, but that's not what Jesus meant when he was giving this number. What Jesus meant is that we need to make forgiveness a lifestyle. Essentially, as we live, forgive. You might want to take notes on that and simply put, as I live, forgive. When Jesus was saying this, it does apply to others. And so if there's other people that come to your mind besides your family, obviously apply that to them. But for the context of our family series, I'm going to address our families because really the people that will most likely need the type of forgiveness that Jesus is talking about are people in your family. Because like I said earlier, you have known them the longest, and they're with you the most. After Jesus shared this shocking number with Peter, he shares a story. Listen in. Matthew 18 says this. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. In the process, one of his debtors who was brought in who owed him millions of dollars, not just a few dollars, millions of dollars, he couldn't pay. So his master ordered that he be sold. Wow, think of the desperation of this, along with his wife, his children, and everything he owned to pay the debt. But the man fell down. Again, think of the desperation he must be feeling. But the man fell down before his master and begged him, "Please be patient with me, and I will pay it all." And the master did something so cool. Then his master was filled with pity for him, and he released him and forgave his debt. Number one, if you're going to be someone that overcomes your hurts and blesses your family, remember that I've been let off the hook. When I've been hurt by my family, I have to remember that I've been let off the hook for betraying God. He let me off the hook through what Jesus did on the cross. I just had to accept it. The same with you. If you've asked Jesus to forgive you, if Jesus is your forgiver and leader, you've been let off the hook. I want you to notice the amount that the person owes, because I believe Jesus is revealing a point through his example. The person owed millions of dollars. Now, I realize that some make more and some make less, but just for simplicity's sake, let's say that you make $50,000 a year. And let's say that you always make $50,000 a year and you work for 50 years. That's about $2.5 million in your lifetime. That still does not equate to millions of dollars. On top of that, 2,000 years ago, a dollar was worth a lot more back then. Let me even just give you an example from 20 to 25 years ago. My parents, back in, I believe, like the mid to early to mid 90s, like 1993, 94, something like that, they bought a house, a huge house with like 5 bedrooms, a few bathrooms. Get this, they bought this house. They're still in this house now. It was on 5 acres. We don't even know what an acre means here in San Diego. We barely know what a small yard means. So get this. They bought this house. Their mortgage payment was cheaper than when I first came to California and had to rent out an apartment. That's how much it's changed even in 20 to 25 years. Now, I realize part of the reason it was higher is because the California market is higher than Colorado's. But just in 20 to 25 years, the value of the dollar is so much different. So 2,000 years ago, the average person wouldn't have been making $50,000 a year, making it seem even more impossible to pay off millions of dollars. Jesus' whole point was this: even a lifetime where every penny you earned went back to God, it wasn't enough. It couldn't repay for the wrongs we've done. Even with that huge debt, if you've asked Jesus to, you have been let off the hook. You've been set free. You know, if I'm being transparent with you, many years ago, I was struggling with something in Robin's past. It wasn't even something that she did to me currently. I was just struggling with it from her past. And I remember her saying sorry and how can I help, and her just trying to be there for me. And I remember the moment, and that God did not do this in a mean way. It was very loving and gracious, but he showed me through the process of trying to get through this, he showed me, again, very lovingly. He didn't throw it in my face, but he said, "Kris, you've done the same thing." And I remember in that moment being like, man, you're right. And if you've let me off the hook, I need to let Robin off the hook. Maybe some of you are thinking the same thing. Yeah, you're right, PK. I've been left off the hook. God forgave me. He let me off the hook. Maybe it's time that I do that for my family. For some, maybe your struggle isn't your family, it's yourself. If you've asked Jesus to forgive you, you need to remember that God has let you off the hook. But your guilt is so heavy that it's slowly crushing you. See, God knows that you're not perfect, and while every sin is serious to God, that's why Jesus went to the cross. He knew that you screwed up, and so he took care of it. He took care of your problem. Jesus did that for you. You don't have to live anymore in your past mistakes. You're off the hook. And guess what? God knows the next mistake that you'll make. And if you ask for forgiveness, He'll forgive you. He knows your next mistake, and He still loves you. Because this was never about who you think you are or your performance. This was always about Jesus and what He has done for you and for me. So when you struggle, remember you're off the hook. So forgive yourself. You want to overcome your hurts and bless your family. Remember that you've been let off the hook. The guy in the story was let off the hook. Let's see how he would respond when someone else owed him. Let's go back to Jesus' story. It says this in Matthew 18. But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s. Start to think of the difference. This guy owed millions, was let off the hook. Now someone owes him a few thousand. He actually did this. He being the gracious guy that he was, even though he had just gotten forgiven millions, he grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. His fellow servant fell down before him and begged him for a little bit more time. You would think at this point in the story he'd remember back. But he didn't. But the guy says, "Be patient with me and I will pay it," he pleaded. But his creditor wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and put in prison until the debt could be paid in full. If you're going to be someone that overcomes your hurts and blesses your family, number 2, you've got to return the favor. You've got to return the favor. You know, it's interesting to me that the king started out harsh, but then ended up forgiving. And the person that received forgiveness ended up being harsh. It's so important that we return the favor and forgive. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean that there should never be consequences. Take a kid, for example. You can still forgive your child, and there can be consequences. Forgiveness doesn't mean that relationships have to go back to the way they were. You can have boundaries and still forgive. Boundaries actually can be very, very healthy. Forgiveness, think of it this way, forgiveness can happen right away, but when someone hurts you in some way, trust takes time to be built back up. So forgive quickly, asking God to help you, then build trust one step at a time. Forgiveness also doesn't mean that you minimize the magnitude of how it affected you. Like, oh, you know what? It was no big deal. It's really okay. Especially when it had been affecting you for a while. If you've been struggling for a while, you don't have to push the magnitude to the side. Jesus even confirms this. Before Peter asked his forgiveness question, Jesus was talking about what you should do if someone wrongs you. Here's some of what he said. He said this, go to them. So we need to go to them. And then he also says this, tell them what they did wrong. Now this shows me that it's okay to say, you hurt me. This really affected me. This was a big deal to me. That said, I forgive you. I choose to forgive you anyways. Do you notice the difference? One minimized the effects that it had on them. The other said how it was. You hurt me. This was a big deal. Now there could be times where it's not necessary to always say how it is. I get that. But sometimes it is necessary. Hey, this was a big deal to me. You hurt me, but I'm going to let you off the hook anyways. You never know how returning the favor could impact someone else. Let me give you an example. Several years ago, I was really struggling with something from my past. Talk about needing to be reminded of that I've been let off the hook. It was just so hard to let go of. And one morning, I got a text from my dad, and it said this. It said, your remaining debt is forgiven. To put that into context, we owed my dad money, and we were paying him monthly to get that debt down. So he texted me to let me know that we didn't owe him anymore. It was so cool for many reasons to get that text. But here's why I share this story with you. I was struggling. My as I talked about earlier, my guilt was slowly crushing me. And I was struggling. And even though that text was from my dad and it was about money, it's almost as if that text message was from Jesus and he was saying this, hey, I got you. Move on. Move on. You returning the favor and letting someone in your family or even another person that's not in your family off the hook could lead them straight to Jesus. Because when we forgive, we're mirroring who God is to someone else. Did you know that the reason that you're blessed is because God decided to forgive you? He believed in this thing called forgiveness, and he loves you that much. That's why you're blessed. And now you have the opportunity to bless others in your family by returning the favor. I know it's hard. I know it's hard to let others off the hook. I'm not pretending there. And here's why it's hard, because it's personal. It hurts, and many times you lose something in the process. You have to remember the king. He didn't forgive pennies. This was personal. It hurt his wallet, which he could have worked very hard to earn. But by forgiving the person, he missed out on getting millions of dollars back. It was personal to him. And while forgiveness is hard, it's worth it. The servant was forgiven millions, and he couldn't forgive a few thousand. Now, before we rail on the servant, we have to realize that we can be the same way. I mean, I even shared an example from my past with my wife. It can be hard for us to forgive at times, and it's hard because it's just so hard to do. At times, we are unwilling to forgive, even though we've been forgiven for a lot. You may have been wondering what these things are, but man, I wish that it was real money, but it's just Monopoly money. But there's like lots of $500 bills in here. There's again, I wish it was real money. There's lots of $100 bills in here, lots of $50 bills in here, and this is what Jesus' whole point to the story was. We have all hurt God in so many ways. We've betrayed him so many times. The debt's so big that there's nothing we could do to repay him. That's why Jesus went to the cross. And because God has erased our debt. Because he's forgiven us, we need to be people that forgive others. Say that you have people in your family. Think of someone in your family and it's like, oh man, that really hurt. And just like a couple dollars goes in. Oh, they did it again. This time it's like it feels like a $5 bill. Like, man, I've been living with this person for a while now, and they just keep hurting me. This just keeps adding up, and oh man, these little things here just keep going and going. I really do think that God wants to speak to us and tell us, hey, I get hurt. I get betrayal. I get that it's painful. But man, do yourself and your family some good. Forgive them. I have forgiven you for so much. I've forgiven you for a debt that you couldn't repay. Forgive them. Forgive them. Forgive them for what they've done. I will help you. I will help you forgive them. Forgive their debt. Now I realize some of you, it might not be the small things. But like I said, even the little things can add up if they go unaddressed. But I realize for some of you, it's been deep, deep betrayal, where it really does feel like millions of dollars of hurt. Can I encourage you? God does not like that you've went through it, but he still wants to help you through it. He still wants to help you forgive, even when it's been deep and hardcore betrayal. And if you're struggling with returning the favor, we've all been there. And I hope this verse will encourage you when it comes to letting others off the hook. It says this in 1 Peter, most of all, love one another deeply. Why? Because love erases many sins by forgiving them. Now, the last time I checked, many doesn't mean a few. And if you're struggling with returning the favor, ask God to help you love deeper, just like he did. He can help you with that. There's a saying out there that says that hurt people hurt people. And man, it's such a true statement. But there's another saying that's true as well, and it can bring freedom, and it's this. You might want to put this in your notes. Forgiven people forgive people. Translation, people that have been let off the hook return the favor. Do you want to overcome your hurts and bless your family? Please return the favor. Please return the favor like God has let you off the hook. Let's see what would happen to this guy that wasn't willing to return the favor. In Matthew 18, it says this. The older servants saw what happened and were very angry. They went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the first servant in. You evil servant, he said, I forgave you for all that you owed me because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on the other servant just as I had mercy on you? In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers. He would be punished until he paid back everything he owed. This is how my Father in heaven will treat you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart. Number 3 in your notes, if you're going to be someone that overcomes hurts and blesses your family, let go of the grudge. Let go of the grudge. As you can see from the story, Holding a grudge can lead to suffering, but letting it go can bring freedom. Now, hear me. Not every painful thing you go through is because you aren't willing to let go. I'm not saying that at all. That said, I do think that there are times where we punish ourselves because we don't let go. This is what happened to the guy. He wouldn't let go, and he was suffering for it. Here's one of the reasons letting go can be so worth it. It can release you from the hurt. Holding a grudge can end up hurting the person. And I think that's why at times we end up holding a grudge. Well, they made me suffer, they hurt me. At the very least, I will hold on to this so that it hurts them too. But can I tell you, you'll also suffer. Others may even suffer because grudges are so damaging. Others can suffer from our grudges because it seeps into other relationships. There was one time where I had a sense that if I didn't deal with forgiving this family member, that I would struggle with other relationships down the road. That's what holding a grudge does. It causes me to suffer, and it can cause other relationships to suffer. For example, have you ever been mad at someone and then accidentally took it out on someone else? Yep, been there, done that. Holding a grudge can bring pain and suffering and death to relationships. Letting it go can bring healing, redemption, life, and freedom to relationships. I want to say this. In most relationships that last, I bet that most times forgiveness played a major role in making it last. Instead of holding a grudge, someone let the other off the hook. In fact, any relationship that has gone the distance most likely had some catalyst moments along the way that kept it going because someone was willing to keep it real. Man, this does suck. You've really hurt me. This really does hurt me. This has affected me, but I'm going to let you off the hook anyways. And can I say, if you know that you've hurt someone in your family, go and say sorry. You never know how far an I'm sorry can go. But I bet a lot of relationships that go the distance, they were able to go the distance because along the way, there was these catalytic moments where they had to choose to either hold a grudge or to forgive, to let them off the hook, to let it go. I want to step away from our families just for a moment. What would happen if every person in a church remembered that they've been let off the hook? Because they remembered that God forgave them for so much, maybe that church would be a voice of grace instead of a voice of judgment to people who are far from God. What would happen if every person in a church let others off the hook? Maybe that church would develop real community, and maybe people who are far from God would have a different perspective about who Jesus is. Maybe, just maybe, the people of that church would create a smoother path to get to Jesus. Back to you. How would your family relationships be different if you remembered that you've been let off the hook? Would you potentially feel less unhealthy guilt if you remembered that you've been let off the hook? Would your family relationships move forward if you decided today that I'm going to let the process of returning the favor start? It might take a while, but with God's help, I'm going to return the favor. Would some of the pain disappear in time if you let go? Maybe you're tired. Can I tell you, life's hard enough without having to carry all this. Let it go. Because one step at a time, one day at a time, you can see hurt leave and blessing enter your home. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you so much for the idea you came up with this concept called forgiveness. And I just pray for my friends watching right now that you would help them if they're struggling. Maybe they're struggling with themselves. Help them know that you can let them off the hook. Maybe they're struggling with returning the favor. Lord, show them how to do that. You care about their family relationships so much. Please, God, help them. Help them to be able to forgive. Give them the strength to let go and forgive. Lord, be with them in their pain. I realize that by some of the things we talked about today, that maybe some pain has been brought up, and I just pray that you would help them with their pain, and that you'd comfort them and guide them through it. Let them know that you're there, but even through the pain, that you'd help them to return the favor and forgive others. There might be a person or two watching, or maybe many watching, where you're just like, you know what? I've never asked Jesus to forgive me. I've never asked him to be the forgiver and leader of my life, but I don't want to carry this heavy burden anymore. I don't want my past mistakes to define me. So, Jesus, would you please forgive me for what I've done? I'm so sorry for doing it. Thank you for taking all my wrongs, all of them, every single one of them. Thank you for taking them. Thank you for letting me off the hook. I will do my best to follow you. Thank you for loving me. Help me to love you back. For all my friends in the room, I pray for families right now. I pray for parents and siblings and spouses and kids and just every family dynamic. I pray, God, that forgiveness would be at the forefront. I pray that families will last because they have these moments where they choose to say, you know what, I'm not holding on to the grudge anymore. I'm going to let go. And Lord, in honor of Mother's Day, I pray for mothers. Help them to have a great and special day. And Lord, if there's any person that has either lost their mother or has a strained relationship with their mother, please be there for them today. Lord, if there's people out there that so desire to be a mother but just haven't been able to be, would you be there for them today? Show them your love. Thank you, Jesus, once again, that you've shown us what forgiveness is. Would you help us to practice that and return the favor in our families and even beyond our families? We love you, Jesus. Thank you for forgiving us. We pray these things in your name. Amen.